The baby made a sound first. A small, tired whimper that cut through the orchestra and the crystal laughter of the Grand Hyatt Seoul's main ballroom. Then came the sound of a woman's knees hitting marble. She pulled the baby closer as she fell. She did not let go of him. She held on tighter. The ballroom cracked open. Servers froze. 3 phones lifted before anyone called for a doctor. Seo Jae-hyun was standing 30 feet away. He turned at the sound of the glass hitting the floor. He saw the green dress first. Then the dark skin against the white marble. Then the baby. His chest locked. He set his glass down slowly. He crossed the ballroom in measured strides. People stepped aside before he reached them. He crouched in front of her. Selena looked up. Her eyes were exhausted and full of something stored for a very long time. The baby on her chest was deeply asleep, his cheek pressed against her collarbone. Jae-hyun looked at the child's face. His jaw tightened. Selena. She looked at him the way someone looks at a person they have been rehearsing a conversation with for months. He's yours, she said. His name is Taewon. He's 8 months old. And I'm done hiding him. The silence spread outward through the ballroom like a wave. A camera flash went off. Then another. Jae-hyun did not look at the photographers. He looked at her. He reached out and gripped her elbow. Can you stand? I've been standing for 8 months without you, she said. I can stand. He pulled her up anyway. One hand on her elbow, one hand briefly supporting the baby's back. Then he turned to his head of security. Clear a path. Now. He put his hand at the small of her back and guided her toward the corridor before anyone could stop them. The door closed behind them. Before we continue with the story, I would like to warmly welcome you to my channel, Soul and Soul Stories by Andra. To everyone returning, welcome back, and to those joining for the first time, I'm truly glad you're here. Kindly take a moment to like, subscribe, and become part of our growing storytelling family. And tell me where you're watching from in the comments, because this story is only just beginning. The private corridor behind the Grand Hyatt's ballroom was lined with gray walls and service lighting. It smelled like linen and cold air. Selena pressed her back against the wall and breathed. Taewon stirred against her chest. He made a small sound, opened his eyes briefly, dark eyes shaped in a way that made her chest ache every time she looked at him, and then closed them again. Jae-hyun stood 4 feet away. His security team took positions at both ends of the corridor. He waited until they were out of earshot. How long have you been in Seoul? He asked. 3 days. Where are you staying? A guest house in Mapogu. His brow moved. With the child. With my son, she said. His name is Taewon. You can use it. Jae-hyun looked at the baby again. He looked for a long time. His face gave away very little, but his stillness gave away everything. He was processing something enormous and doing it quietly, the way a very controlled person processes something that has cracked them open. Why tonight? He said. Why here? Selena's jaw tightened. Because I tried every other way. I called your office 4 times. Your assistant told me you were unavailable. I sent 2 letters to your company address. They were returned unopened. I flew back from Lagos with an 8-month-old baby and 1 carry-on bag because I ran out of options, Jae-hyun. He said nothing for a moment. You left Korea without telling me, he said. My family gave me 2 choices. Leave or lose everything. I had just found out I was pregnant. I was 24 years old and terrified. Her voice stayed level, but her hands adjusted their hold on Taewon with a firmness that said the rest. I made the wrong choice. I know that. But I'm here now. Your family, he said slowly. They knew. My mother. My uncle. They decided that a pregnancy with a Korean man, a public figure, would destroy our family's reputation in Lagos. They arranged for me to go to my aunt's house in Abuja for the full term. After he was born, they wanted me to give him up. Her voice fractured there just briefly and she reset it. I refused. I took him and I left. Jae-hyun looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the corridor ceiling, exhaled through his nose and looked back at her. I want a paternity confirmation, he said. I expected that. That is not me doubting you. That is me building a legal record that protects him. Selena studied his face. Something in his phrasing, the word protects, made her throat tighten in a way she was not ready for. Okay, she said. Tonight you and Taewon are coming to my residence. He raised one hand before she could speak. The guest house in Mapogu is not secure. Photographs of you leaving that ballroom are already online. By morning, journalists will find the address. She hated that he was right. She could see it on his face that he knew she hated it. This is not about us, he said, and his voice dropped just slightly. This is about him. She looked down at Taewon, sleeping in her arms. His small chest rose and fell. A tiny crease ran along his cheek from where he had been pressed against her dress. Fine, she said. One night. Jae-hyun called his driver. The photographs were already on 3 major Korean news sites by the time the car reached his apartment building in Hanamdong. His phone had been vibrating continuously for 20 minutes. He kept it face down on his knee. Selena sat on the far side of the back seat with Taewon in her lap, looking out the window at Seoul passing by in the dark. She had put the baby into a small carrier she pulled from her bag, a soft wrap carrier worn and washed many times, and Taewon sat against her chest with his eyes half open, watching the city lights with the unfocused curiosity of a baby who had not yet learned to be afraid of anything. Jae-hyun watched him for a moment in the dark of the car. The baby turned his head and looked directly at him. Jae-hyun looked back. Taewon blinked slowly, the way babies do, with complete indifference to the gravity of everything happening around him. Then he turned back to the window. Jae-hyun's phone lit up with a call from Director Hwang of the SJ Capital Board. He let it go to voicemail. Then it lit up again with a call from his mother. He answered that one. Jae-hyun. His mother's voice was tight and precise. Explain what is happening right now. I have 5 women calling me asking if you have a secret African child. I am handling it, he said. Handling it. You are in a car. You are not in a boardroom. You are not giving a statement. You are in a car. Pause. Is the child actually yours? I will know for certain within 48 hours. Jae-hyun. Mother. His voice was quiet. I will call you tomorrow morning. He ended the call. Selena had not looked at him during the conversation. She was watching Taewon's face. But he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself braced against whatever came next, the way a person holds themselves when they have been bracing against things for a very long time and are no longer sure when it is safe to stop. Your family is reacting, she said to the window. Yes. I did not come here to cause problems for you. I know why you came here, he said. You came here for him. She finally looked at him. Straight on in the dark of the car with Seoul moving past both windows. Her expression was careful and complicated. You're not what I expected, she said. He said nothing. I expected you to be angry, she said. Or to deny it. Or to have your security team put us in a cab. The night is still young, he said. And then, after a pause that stretched just long enough to mean something, I am not going to do any of those things. His apartment occupied the top 2 floors of a tower in Hanamdong with a view of the Han River that Selena registered only briefly before her focus shifted to the practical problem of getting Taewon settled somewhere safe and quiet. Jae-hyun's housekeeper, a composed woman named Mrs. Yoon, had been called ahead and had already assembled what she could find. A folded blanket, 2 bed pillows arranged into a makeshift border on a wide guest bed, a glass of water on the nightstand. Selena looked at the arrangement and felt, for one unguarded second, the particular exhaustion of a woman who had been doing everything alone for 8 months and had just been given something small and practical by someone else. She set Taewon down on the bed. He rolled onto his back, looked at the ceiling and grabbed his own foot. He does that when he's comfortable, Selena said, more to herself than to Jae-hyun, who was standing in the doorway. What else does he do? Jae-hyun asked. She looked up at him. He was still in his gala suit, jacket gone now, shirt collar open at the top button. He was watching Taewon with an expression that he had clearly not intended to show anyone. He pulls my braids, she said. He laughs when I sneeze. He refuses to sleep on his right side. He knows the word for milk in English and Igbo. She paused. He started saying something that sounds like Abba last week. I did not teach him that. Jae-hyun's jaw moved. Abba, he said quietly. The Korean word for father. I know what it means, she said. They looked at each other across the guest room. Taewon kicked his feet and made a satisfied sound. I need to make several calls, Jae-hyun said finally. You should sleep. Both of you. He turned to leave, then stopped. The kitchen is fully stocked. Mrs. Yoon will be here until midnight. If Taewon needs anything, she has raised 3 children of her own. Jae-hyun. He turned back. Thank you, she said. She said it plainly without performance, looking directly at him. He nodded once and he left. By 6 in the morning, the story had spread internationally. 3 Korean entertainment news outlets had run the ballroom photos under headlines that ranged from sensational to cruel. 2 international tabloids had picked it up. Twitter in Korea was generating thousands of posts per hour. The photographs of Selena on the floor with Taewon against her chest, and then Jae-hyun crouching in front of her, were the 2 most shared images. Jae-hyun had been on call since 2 in the morning. His PR director, Oh Soo-jin, sat across from him at the long dining table at 5:45 with a tablet full of drafts and dark circles under her eyes. The board is calling an emergency session for Thursday, she said. Director Huang is pushing for a statement of denial. He wants you to say the paternity is unconfirmed and you are cooperating with legal proceedings. I will not say that. Su Jin paused. Jae-hyun SSI. The optics. The child is in my apartment, he said. I am not issuing a statement of denial. Su Jin set her tablet down very carefully. Then what do you want to say? That I am aware of the reports. That I am reviewing the matter privately and will make a formal statement at the appropriate time. Nothing more. That will not satisfy the board. The board works for the company, he said. The company is mine. Draft the statement. Su Jin picked up her tablet. One more thing, she said. A woman named Yoon Chai-rin gave an interview this morning to Seoul Style magazine. She is describing herself as your recent close companion. She is implying that the woman at the gala is a foreign opportunist. Jae-hyun did not react visibly. But his hand, resting on the table, closed slowly into a flat palm. Chai-rin. He had attended 3 social events with her in the past year because their families moved in the same circles and she was skilled at being present without demanding anything. He had never given her reason to believe they were anything more than that. She had chosen this morning to redefine what they were. Ignore it, he said. The public will not ignore it. She has 2.3 million followers. Then find out who spoke to her before that interview. Someone fed her the narrative. He pushed back from the table. Someone on my board or close to it. Su Jin's expression shifted into the particular alertness of a person who has just understood that the situation is larger than it appeared. I'll look into it, she said. Selena woke at 6:15 to find Taewon sitting up on the bed and studying her face with the patient intensity of a baby who had been awake for some time and had decided not to disturb her. His lower lip was shiny with drool. He was holding one of her braids. She looked at him. He grinned, wide, gap-toothed, completely unaware of the international news cycle running his face across a dozen websites. She sat up and pulled him into her lap and held him and breathed. Then she checked her phone. 22 missed calls. Most from her mother. 4 from her uncle Emeka. 2 from a number she did not recognize, which she later determined was a Nigerian tabloid reporter who had gotten her number from someone in her family's extended social circle. She stared at the screen. Then she put the phone face down. She dressed Taewon in the spare outfit she had packed in the bag she always kept with him, the habitual over-preparation of a single mother, and carried him to the kitchen. Jae-hyun was already there. He was standing at the kitchen counter in a gray long-sleeve shirt and dark trousers, reading something on his phone, a cup of coffee beside him. He looked like a man who had not slept but was not going to acknowledge that. He looked up when she came in. Taewon saw him and went very still, doing the evaluative stare that babies do when they are deciding how to categorize a new person. Jae-hyun looked at Taewon. Taewon reached one hand toward him, opening and closing his fist. Jae-hyun set his phone down. He walked to them slowly, giving the baby time to adjust, and crouched in front of Selena's arms so that he was at eye level with Taewon. Good morning, he said to the baby in Korean. Taewon grabbed his finger. Jae-hyun went very still. He looked at the baby's hand wrapped around his finger, at the small dark knuckles, at the fingernail the size of a grain of rice. Something shifted in his face. Not dramatically, not loudly, but the way a landscape shifts in the moment just before dawn, when the light begins to change the shape of everything. He stayed crouched there for a moment longer than was necessary. Then he straightened, keeping his expression controlled, and looked at Selena. There is formula and rice porridge, he said. Mrs. Yun left porridge. I was not sure what he eats. He eats everything, she said. He is relentless. Jae-hyun almost smiled. She could see it at the corner of his mouth just for a second. Sit down, he said. I will heat the porridge. She sat. She watched him move around the kitchen, methodical, careful, completely unused to preparing food for a baby but unwilling to ask for guidance, and she felt something shift in her chest that she was not ready to examine. The paternity test results came back Thursday. Jae-hyun had used a private medical facility and expedited processing. Taewon was his son. 100% confirmation. Jae-hyun read the results alone in his home office. He sat with the report for a long time. Then he called Su Jin and said, "Tell the board I am prepared to address them at 4 o'clock. The board meeting was held at the SJ Capital Group headquarters in Gangnam. 12 directors sat around a long glass table. Director Huang, 62 years old and deeply invested in the idea that Jae-hyun's personal life should be invisible, led the conversation. The share price dropped 4% at opening, Huang said. Investors are nervous. The Shin Group partnership is now conditional on a resolution of this matter. There is no matter to resolve, Jae-hyun said. I have a son. His name is Taewon. The paternity has been confirmed by a certified medical facility, and I will be filing for legal acknowledgement of paternity by end of next week. Wang set his pen down. Jae-hyun SSI, the optics of this situation. I am aware of the optics. His voice was even. The optics of a man acknowledging his child are not as damaging as you think. The optics of a man denying a confirmed child to protect his stock price are far worse. Silence around the table. The Shin Group, Wang said carefully, has expressed concern about the nature of the relationship with the child's mother. They are a conservative family. The Shin Group can review the partnership terms if they choose. That is their right. Jae-hyun looked at each person at the table. I want to be clear about something. My family situation is not a board agenda item. I invited you here today out of courtesy. The decisions I make about my son and his mother will be made by me. If any of you have concerns about the direction of this company, I am available to discuss those concerns on their merits. Nobody spoke. He left the boardroom at 4:23. In the elevator, alone, he pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes for exactly 4 seconds. Selena was in the guest suite's small sitting room when he came home. She had Taewon on the floor in front of her, watching him practice pulling himself to standing using her knee as a support. Every time he made it to his feet, he looked at her with an expression of profound personal triumph. She heard the apartment door. She heard Jae-hyun's shoes on the floor. She heard him stop. She looked up to find him standing in the sitting room doorway, still in his board meeting suit, looking at Taewon with the expression of a man who has been in a war all day and has just walked into a room that does not know anything about wars. Taewon pulled himself to standing using her knee, looked over his shoulder and saw Jae-hyun. He let go of Selena's knee. He took one unsteady step forward, then sat down hard on the floor. He looked at the floor. Then he looked up at Jae-hyun, entirely unbothered. He just started doing that this week, Selena said. The standing. Jae-hyun crouched down and held out his hands, palms up, at Taewon's level. Taewon considered the hands. Then he grabbed both of them and used them to pull himself back upright. Jae-hyun held steady. He let the baby use his hands as a bar. Taewon stood there, swaying, holding his father's hands, and looked at Selena like he was very pleased with his own engineering solution. How was the board? Selena asked. Managed, he said. He did not look up from Taewon. They tried to pressure you. They tried. And? I acknowledged him to the board. Formally. He finally looked at her, over the baby's head. I am filing legal paternity acknowledgement next week. Selena's breath caught. She kept her face still. You did not have to do that yet, she said carefully. I know. The share price. I know about the share price. She looked at him for a moment. He was watching her steadily, waiting for her reaction, and she had the distinct sense that he had made this decision before he walked into the room and was not looking for her approval but for something else. Something smaller. Recognition, maybe, or acknowledgement that she had seen him make the choice. Thank you, she said. Again. Plainly. He nodded. He looked back at Taewon, who had decided he was done standing and sat down again with great deliberateness. The story with Yoon Chae-rin ran 3 more cycles before Soo-jin traced the source. A junior analyst at the Shin Group, the conservative investment partner that was reconsidering its deal, had been in contact with Chae-rin's publicist. The narrative had been deliberately planted. Selena as an opportunist, Chae-rin as the wronged companion, Jae-hyun as a man who needed to be rescued from an inconvenient foreign entanglement. Jae-hyun read the traced communication chain on a Friday evening in his office while Selena put Taewon to sleep in the next room. When he came out, she was sitting on the large sectional sofa with her legs folded under her, reading something on her phone. She looked up. He sat on the far end of the sofa, maintaining the careful distance he had been maintaining all week, and told her what he had found. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at the middle distance for a moment. They want to make me the problem, she said. So the solution becomes removing me. Yes. That is what my family wanted too, she said. Remove the problem. Clean the story. She turned her phone face down on her knee. My mother called me twice today. She is telling people in Lagos that I acted against the family's wishes. She is building a version of the story where she is the reasonable one. What do you want to do about it? She looked at him. What do you mean? Your family, the board, Chae-rin, the media, you are being attacked from 4 directions at once, he said. What do you want to do? She studied him. Most people would tell me what I should do. I am asking what you want. She was quiet for a moment. Taewon made a small sleep sound from the next room, and they both turned their heads automatically toward the sound, then looked back at each other. I want to stop running, she said. I have been running since I was 24. I am 25 now and I am tired. She said it simply without drama. I want to stay. I want him to know his father. I want to stop being someone else's problem to be managed. Jae-hyun held her gaze. Then stay, he said. She looked at him carefully. You're not saying that because you feel responsible. I am saying it because my son should have both his parents in the same city. Pause. And because, he stopped. He looked at the coffee table. Then he looked back at her. Because I have been thinking about you since you left. I did not stop. The apartment was very quiet. Outside, Seoul glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Selena breathed. Jae-hyun. I am not asking you for anything, he said. I know where we are. I know the situation. I am telling you the truth because you deserve the truth and because I am tired of operating around it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her straight. We will figure out the rest. She looked at him for a long time. Then she uncurled her legs from under her and set her feet on the floor. I pulled your braids, she said quietly, unexpectedly. He blinked. What? When you said Taewon pulls my braids, I remembered the first time we were together. You pulled my braids. Gently. Her voice was entirely composed, but her eyes were not. I never forgot that. He said nothing. But he did not look away. We should sleep, she said, standing. He stood too. They were closer than they had intended. The sofa arrangement had shifted the geometry of the room without either of them noticing. She was close enough that he could see the small gold earring in her second ear hole that she had been wearing all week, the one detail that seemed personal and unconstructed in all the formal chaos. He reached up and tucked a braid that had come loose behind her ear. He did it once carefully and then he stepped back. Good night, Selena, he said. She breathed. Good night. The Shin Group withdrew from the partnership formally on a Monday. Director Hwang called it a significant blow. 3 business media outlets ran the story as evidence that Jae-hyun's personal choices were damaging the company. What they did not run, because Soo-jin had been very careful, was the counter-story. The story of how Jae-hyun had quietly met with 2 larger investment groups the previous Thursday. The story of how both groups, led by a younger generation of Korean investors who had different ideas about what leadership looked like, had expressed strong interest in expanding their positions in SJ Capital. Jae-hyun had said nothing about this publicly. He let the narrative of the Shin Group withdrawal breathe for 48 hours. Then he released a single statement. SJ Capital was pleased to announce expanded investment commitments from 2 leading funds, and the company's growth trajectory remained strong. The share price recovered. It then rose 2% above its previous position. Director Hwang requested a private meeting. Jae-hyun declined. Chai-rin posted a carefully worded social media statement suggesting she had been misrepresented in recent coverage. Nobody believed her, but nobody particularly engaged with her either, because the story had moved on. What the story had moved on to was Selena. A feature interview request came in through Soo-jin from a major Korean women's magazine. Then from a lifestyle platform. Then from a journalist named Park De-eun who was well known for humanizing complex stories without sensationalizing them. Soo-jin brought the request to Selena directly, which Jae-hyun had asked her to do. He said the decision is yours, Soo-jin told her, sitting across from her in the guest suite. He will support whatever you choose. Selena looked at the 3 requests. What does he think I should do? Soo-jin paused. He said, exactly, that you are not a PR strategy and he is not going to treat you like one. Selena looked at the ceiling briefly. Then she looked back at Soo-jin. Tell the journalist Park De-eun that I will meet her for coffee. Just coffee, no recording equipment. She paused. And tell Jae-hyun to stop being so. She stopped. So what? Soo-jin asked, carefully neutral. Decent, Selena said. It makes everything harder. The coffee meeting with Park De-eun went long. 2 hours in a quiet cafe in Yongsan, with Taewon in the carrier on Selena's chest, occasionally grabbing De-eun's pen with great enthusiasm. De-eun was sharp and warm and did not pretend the story was simple. She asked about Lagos, about the pressure Selena's family had applied, about what it felt like to be 24 and pregnant and alone in a situation she had not designed. Selena answered with the same plainness she applied to everything. She did not perform victimhood. She did not perform strength either. She described what had happened the way someone describes a road they had to walk because it was the only road available. Do you regret coming to the gala? De-eun asked. Selena thought about it honestly. I regret that it was dramatic, she said. I did not want a scene. I wanted a conversation. The scene happened because I had run out of time and options. She looked at Taewon, who was examining his own hand. I do not regret that he knows his son. And the relationship between you and Seo Jae-hyun? Selena looked up at her. What relationship? Dawoon smiled. That's a fair answer. The feature ran the following week with the title, The Woman Who Came Back. It was careful and generous and showed Selena as a full person. It referenced the family pressure without naming her mother specifically. It described Taewon as a healthy, cheerful baby who had recently learned to pull himself to standing and was working on the next step. Jae-hyun read it at his desk and said nothing to anyone for 20 minutes. Then he called Selena. Dawoon did good work, he said. She is a good journalist, Selena said. Pause. Taewon pulled himself to standing again this morning, she said. He made it 2 steps before he sat down. The pause on his end was different from his business pauses, shorter, softer. I will be home by 7, he said. She noticed the word. Oh. She filed it away without commenting on it. We'll be here, she said. Selena's mother arrived in Seoul on a Wednesday unannounced. Jae-hyun's front desk security called up to the apartment at 10 in the morning to report that a Mrs. Chioma Davis was in the lobby requesting access. She had flown in from Lagos. She had luggage. Selena stood in the kitchen with the phone to her ear and did not speak for a moment. Tell her I will come down, she said. She put Taewon in the playpen Mrs. Yoon had sourced the previous week and went downstairs alone. Chioma Davis was 61 years old and had the bearing of a woman who had rarely been told no and had built a persona around that fact. She was wearing a blue agbada and had her hair wrapped in a matching geli. She looked at the lobby of the building, at the marble floor and the uniformed security, and she managed to appear unimpressed by choice rather than ignorance. She looked at Selena. You look tired, she said. Hello, Mama, Selena said. I have come to bring you home. I am not going home. Chioma's expression tightened. Selena, you do not understand what you have done to this family. Your uncle is being asked questions at his club. People are talking. People are talking because you forced me to hide my pregnancy, Selena said. Her voice was level. They are talking because I had a child in secret and then had to collapse in a ballroom to get his father's attention because every legitimate approach was blocked. They are not talking because of anything I chose. You chose to go to that gala. Yes. I chose to stop hiding. Chioma stepped closer. That man will not marry you. Korean men like him, they use foreign women and then they protect their image. He will put you in a quiet apartment and he will visit the child and he will marry a Korean woman from a good family. That is what will happen. Selena held her mother's gaze. You do not know him. I know his type. You have never met him. I do not need to meet him to know. Mama. Selena's voice went quiet. I love you. You're my mother. But what you did to me, sending me away, making me hide, trying to take my son from me, I have not forgiven that. And I will not go back to Lagos to make your social situation more comfortable. She breathed. If you want to see Taewon, you can see him. But not today. Not like this. Chioma's face moved through several emotions very quickly. You are choosing him over your family, she said. I am choosing my son, Selena said. My son who deserves both his parents. She went back upstairs. She stood in the kitchen for a long moment after the elevator doors closed. Her hands were shaking slightly. She pressed them flat on the counter. Jae-hyun came home at 6:30 and found her at the kitchen table with Taewon on her lap, feeding him small pieces of soft pear. She looked composed. Your mother came, he said. It was not a question. Bum-soo had sent him a report. She came, Selena said. Are you all right? She looked at him. He was standing at the edge of the kitchen in his coat, not yet settled, watching her with the careful attention he always gave her when something had happened. She said you would never marry me, Selena said. He held her gaze. She said you would keep me quiet and convenient and eventually marry someone appropriate. Selena's voice was steady. I want you to know I told her that was not true. But I told her that based on who you are, not based on any promise you have made me. Because you have made me no such promise. Selena. I am not asking you for one, she said quickly. I am telling you where I stood with my mother. I thought you should know. He set his coat on the counter. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. He leaned forward. When this is less chaotic, he said slowly and carefully, when you have had time to settle and trust that I am not going to disappear or manage you or put you in a quiet apartment somewhere, I am going to ask you something. And I want you to be able to answer it without pressure. He paused. Your mother is wrong. But I will not prove it with words. Selena looked at him across the table. Taewon put a piece of pear in her hand. Eat, Taewon said, his new word applied with total democratic commitment to everyone around him. Selena laughed. Genuinely for the first time in days. It broke across her face warm and unguarded, and Jae-hyun watched it happen with the expression of someone memorizing something. 3 weeks later, Jae-hyun held a small private gathering at the apartment. Not a press event. Not a public statement. Just 12 people. His closest 2 friends from university, Soo-jin, Bum-soo, 2 colleagues he genuinely respected, and on Selena's side her friend Adana who had flown in from London, and De-eun who had become something like an ally. He stood in the living room with Taewon on his arm. He had been practicing this quietly with Mrs. Yun's guidance, getting the angles right, learning how the baby wanted to be held, learning that Taewon preferred to face outward so he could see everything, and said to the room without ceremony, "This is my son." Taewon grabbed Jae-hyun's collar. He looked at the room of adults looking at him. He said very clearly, "Abba." Selena, standing 6 feet away with Adana's hand in hers, pressed her free hand to her mouth. Jae-hyun looked at her over Taewon's head. His expression did something complicated and very quiet. He looked at her the way someone looks at a person they intend to spend their life with, when they are first becoming certain of it. She lowered her hand. She looked back at him. Adana squeezed her hand. "That man is absolutely gone for you," Adana whispered. Selena moved into a permanent suite in the apartment by the end of the month. It was practical, they told each other. Taewon was more settled. The security arrangement was better. It made logistical sense. They both knew it was not only logistical, but they were careful. They were both people who had been burned by rushing, in different ways, and they moved around each other with a conscious deliberateness that was its own kind of intimacy. He learned that she took her coffee with no sugar and wanted it left on the counter, not handed to her, because she had a habit of being absorbed in something when she woke up and could not manage receiving things gracefully before 9 o'clock. She learned that he read physical books at night, not screens, and that he left them face down when he stopped reading, which irritated her, and she started leaving bookmarks on his nightstand without saying anything about it. He started using the bookmarks. She noticed. Neither of them commented on it. He came home one evening to find her on the floor with Taewon, teaching him a clapping game she had learned from her grandmother in Enugu. The words were in Igbo, rhythmic and warm, and Taewon was following along with enormous incompetent enthusiasm, clapping slightly wrong and completely delighted with himself. She was laughing, soft and continuous, her braids loose around her shoulders, barefoot on the living room floor. Jae-hyun stood in the doorway for a full minute before she noticed him. When she looked up, his expression was entirely unguarded, open in a way it rarely was in any other context. He looked like a man who had been shown something he had not known he needed. "Come sit down," she said. He took off his shoes. He sat on the floor. He let Taewon climb across his knee and resumed the clapping game. Selena taught him the Igbo words. He repeated them carefully, getting the tones wrong, making Taewon shriek with laughter at the strange sounds. She corrected him twice, and on the third try he got close enough that she said "better," with a smile that started at the corner of her mouth and worked its way up. Later, when Taewon was asleep, they sat on the sofa, closer than usual. Not touching, but the distance had changed over the weeks. It had gotten smaller by degrees, the way temperature changes, gradually enough that you could not identify the moment when the cold became warmth. "My uncle called today," she said. "He wants to reconcile. He says the family is embarrassed by how things looked." "What do you want?" "I want an apology. A real one. Not a reconciliation that is actually a request for me to make their discomfort go away." "Then ask for the apology. And if he doesn't give it? Then you will know exactly what you are dealing with," he said. "And you will make your decision with clear information." She turned her head to look at him. He was close enough that the movement brought her face near his shoulder. "You are very practical about complicated emotional things," she said. "I was not always," he said. "My father died when I was 22. He was very invested in the idea that I would make choices that served the family image before my own judgment. When he was gone, I had to decide which of his rules I kept and which I left with him." Pause. It took time. But it clarified things. She studied his profile. He was looking at the Han River through the windows. "What did you keep?" she asked. "Loyalty," he said. "To people who are actually loyal. Not to image." He glanced at her. "The rest I left." She looked at the river too. "I kept stubbornness," she said. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. "I know. I kept the part that knows what love is supposed to feel like," she said quietly. "Even when the people teaching me had complicated ideas about it, I kept the baseline." He looked at her fully then. The room was quiet. Outside, the Han River was dark and wide and moving. He reached over and took her hand. He held it, not dramatically, just held it on the cushion between them, his thumb moving once across her knuckles and then going still. She let him. 6 months after the gala, The legal paternity acknowledgement was complete. Taewon had 3 Korean words, 2 Igbo words, and a sound he made specifically when he wanted rice porridge that was not technically a word but communicated perfectly. He was pulling himself to standing against furniture and occasionally releasing the furniture to stand alone for 4 or 5 seconds, wavering and triumphant. The media had moved to other stories. The investors who had stayed were comfortable. The investors who had left had been replaced by better ones. Selena's uncle Emeka called on a Thursday evening and apologized. He said it plainly and without conditions. What the family had done was wrong. He was sorry. He wanted to know his nephew. She accepted it. She called her mother the following Sunday. The call lasted 40 minutes. It was not resolved. But it was open. Jae-hyun watched her face when she came out of the guest suite after the call with her mother. He waited. She is coming around, Selena said. Slowly? At my mother's pace, which is very slow. A breath. But she asked to see photos of him. He nodded. I sent her 20, Selena said. Including the one of you on the floor teaching him to clap. He looked at her. She said he has your jaw, Selena told him. Something quietly significant happened in his expression. She said that? She said that, Selena confirmed. I think that was her way of accepting something. He sat with that for a moment. Then he stood up. He went to the kitchen, came back with 2 glasses of water, set one in front of her and sat back down, closer than his usual position on the sofa. Close enough that his knee was against hers. She did not move away. They watched the river through the windows and Taewon slept in the next room, and outside Seoul made its continuous indifferent light. He asked her on a Sunday in late April. He had planned something. Soo-jin had mentioned it obliquely in a way that meant Jae-hyun had specifically told her to say nothing, and Adana had called from London with an energy that suggested she already knew something and was doing extremely poor work at appearing natural. But when it actually happened, it was not planned. It was a Sunday morning. Taewon had woken at 6 and dragged himself to standing against the coffee table and stood there so long without falling that Selena had grabbed Jae-hyun's arm in the middle of her sentence and said, "Look," and they had both been still, watching the baby stand on his own with the absolute focus of 2 people who could not believe what was happening in front of them. Then Taewon took a step. Then another. Then he sat down and looked at them with the expression of someone who had just casually done something remarkable. Selena made a sound she could not describe and picked him up, and Jae-hyun put his arms around both of them without deciding to, just moved, just folded himself around them in the warm sunlit living room with the Han River outside and the baby between them and his chin at the top of her head. She turned her face into his chest. He held on. They stayed like that for a moment that lasted longer than moments usually do. "Selena," he said. His voice was low and close and very certain. She did not look up. "I told you I would ask you something when things were less chaotic." She went still. "I know this is a Sunday morning and you have not had your coffee, and I had a ring purchased for 3 weeks that I intended to give to you at dinner on Friday, and then Taewon decided to walk today and I cannot." He stopped. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "I cannot wait until Friday." She looked up at him. His expression was very direct. Jae-hyun in the boardroom was direct in a strategic way. This was different. This was direct in a way that had nothing behind it except the thing itself. "Selena Davis," he said. "I want to build a life with you. I want to raise him with you. I want to know who you are 10 years from now and 20 years from now." He held her face in both hands. "Will you marry me?" Taewon, sandwiched between them, said "Abba," and then tried to eat Jae-hyun's shirt. Selena laughed. Her eyes were full and her face was completely open. No composure, no self-protection, just her. "Yes," she said. He kissed her for the first time right there, in the Sunday morning light, with their son between them chewing on fabric and deeply pleased with himself. They were married 4 months later. A small ceremony in Jeju. 40 people. His family, her friends, Adana as maid of honor, Daeun in the front row, Taewon in a tiny suit that he spent the first 15 minutes of the ceremony attempting to remove. Selena wore her hair in a high crown of locks threaded with small gold rings that caught the light when she moved. She walked without anyone giving her away, because she had decided she was arriving as herself. She had walked roads alone that most people did not walk alone. She could walk this one. Jae-hyun watched her come down the aisle toward him with the particular stillness of a man who has decided something completely and is waiting with full presence for it to arrive. When she reached him, Taewon, being held by Mrs. Yoon in the front row, reached both arms out toward his parents and said "Mama," and then "Abba" in immediate succession, which made every single person in the 40-person ceremony either laugh or cry, and several people did both. They said their vows looking at each other, not at the officiant. When Jae-hyun slipped the ring on her finger, he held her hand for a moment longer than required. "I've got you," he said quietly enough that only she could hear. She turned her hand over in his and squeezed. The following summer, Selena was nauseous for 2 weeks before she understood why. She sat in the bathroom of their Hanamdong apartment, hers and his and Taewon's, with the test in her hand, and then she walked out and found Jae-hyun at his desk reading contracts. She set the test on top of the contract. He looked at it. Then he looked at her. The beginning of something warm and enormous moved across his face. Taewon is going to be insufferable about this, she said. Jae-hyun stood up and crossed the room and held her and said nothing because there was nothing that needed to be said. Their daughter was born the following March. They named her Seo Neka, which was Igbo for Mother is Supreme, because Selena said she was going to have an opinion about her name regardless, so they might as well begin as they meant to continue. Taewon was 20 months old when Neka arrived. He stood next to the hospital bed and looked at his sister with the evaluative intensity of a small person confronting something that is going to fundamentally reorganize his life. Then he pointed at her and looked at Jae-hyun. "Abba," he said, indicating the baby, sharing the information, making sure his father was aware. Jae-hyun picked him up and sat on the edge of the hospital bed beside Selena and held his son on his knee while his wife held their daughter. The room was very full for a room with 4 people in it. Selena looked at Jae-hyun. He looked back at her. Between them their children breathed. She had flown to Seoul with 1 carry-on bag and an 8-month-old baby and nothing resembling a plan. She had collapsed on a marble floor in a green sequin dress. She had been photographed and analyzed and dissected and survived every single piece of it. She had stopped running. She had built something. It stood now in a hospital room in Seoul on a March afternoon, steady and warm and entirely real, with 2 children in it and a man who had chosen it publicly and privately and at cost, and she felt the full weight of it, not the dragging weight of what had been carried alone, but the grounded weight of something that had been built to last. Taewon leaned over and very gently touched his sister's cheek with 1 finger. Neka turned her face toward the touch. Nobody moved. "Thank you so much for spending this time with Selena, Jae-hyun, Taewon, and little Neka. If this story held your heart the way I hoped it would, I need to ask you a few things before you go. Was the truth revealed too soon? Or did Selena wait too long already? Did Jae-hyun risk too much for a woman the world told him to walk away from? Or was he simply doing what a man of character does? And you, be honest, would you have stayed through all of it? The media, the board, the family, the chaos? Or would you have taken the quiet exit? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please like it, share it, and subscribe to Soul and Soul Stories by Andra because there are more stories coming. Love stories, heart stories, true feeling stories about people who fight for each other across every kind of distance. You being here means everything. Thank you for watching.